the first ever Portals community call. This all came about, I was asked to participate in the MVP Advent Calendar that Megan V. Walker had set up in the month of December. And so my gift was a couple hours of my consulting time. And the lucky winner of that was Edri Mpantuki, who's on the call with us, and what he wanted to do was actually share his gift with the rest of the community. So, so my initial thought was, okay, we can do a call like this, and I thought, well, why don't we do this instead of just doing it kind of once? Why don't we just do something like this every month? Portals is becoming a topic that more and more people are interested in, so I think there's probably an appetite. The attendees we've got so far here, excellent turnout so far. So I think there's clearly an appetite in the community to have, a call once a month just to find out what's going on with Portals, whether that's the Microsoft Power Apps Portals product, or in some cases, if you're say on premise or for whatever other reasons, maybe the Microsoft offering isn't for you. We can certainly cover topics about other portal technologies for integrating with CDS. So again, I'm very, very thankful that you've chosen to take an hour out of your day and spend it on Portals. Okay. So what I'm going to do here, just a quick introduction about myself. My name is Nicholas Hayduk. I am the president and I'm a software engineer with Engineered Code Consulting, Inc. I am lucky enough to be a Microsoft MVP in Business Applications awarded back in September. Is pretty much for my contributions to to Portals. So I've been doing Portals work for about 10 years now. I actually started my career with ADX Studio in 2009. And so those of you familiar with the history of Portals, the Power Apps Portal product started off as ADX Studio Portals, was built by them, and they were acquired by Microsoft in 2015. So I've been doing this pretty much as long as anyone could be. Since when I started there, the Portals things was just getting started. And yeah, it's been a passion of mine for over 10 years now. If you do want to reach out, feel free here. I see Jason started the recording, so that's good because I think I forgot to do that. Now, yeah, if you want to reach out, you can reach out to me. I've got LinkedIn. You can see the Twitter account. I've got my blog in there. I also do a roughly weekly YouTube video on some sort of Power Apps Portal related tip. So a lot of ways to get in touch, and happy to connect with anyone out there, and always happy to talk Portals. So, and I do want to just quickly mention here our hosts. Oh man, that image does not look good. That looked different yesterday. I wonder what happened there. Sorry about that. So MS Dynamics World, want to thank them for hosting the call, helping me out, giving me the software here that we needed to share this with the world, and to help coordinate and registrations and all that sort of stuff. So I will be sure to update a different image next time. All right, so just a quick agenda, what I'm hoping to cover today, and this will be kind of a standard thing as we go through these calls. Of course, really what these are about is getting, whatever the community is looking for, I'm happy to help deliver on. So, but at this point, the agenda will go over some, if there's any Portals news in the last month, we'll then kind of focus on a featured topic. And today's featured topic is building a portal for customers to view and print invoices, and that was the topic that Edri had selected. So this is for him. Then if we got time, we'll do some Q&A, and then we'll talk about the date and time of the next Portals community call. So that's kind of what's on tap. So maybe let's quickly talk about news. Now, obviously, since we haven't had a call ever, we could go back a long ways, but I'll just kind of give you guys an update on what's happened over the last month or so in Portals, specifically with regards to Power Apps Portals. There is a new, they do monthly releases. The monthly releases are often just kind of minor bug fixes. and they do have, one of those. That's I can see some of the portals that I work on have already been updated. There's a couple issues in there. It's actually the subject of the blog post that I'll be releasing here in the next couple days that that have been resolved that are fairly high on my priority list. One of them was the fact that if you were using entity lists or entity forms on a rewrite page template, your entity form or entity list didn't display. And the reason that's a problem is that if you're using the calendar or the geolocation capabilities, you have to put them on a rewrite page template. And so when those weren't displaying, there was essentially no way to leverage the built-in geolocation and the calendar functionality. So I'm very happy to see that Microsoft has cleaned that up. Other than that, I think the big thing that we're all waiting for is, I believe it's scheduled for next week, will be the release notes for 2020 Wave 1. So we're hopeful to see some, typically that's when we find out what we're gonna see out of the portal product here over the next 6 months. So keep an eye out for next week when those release notes come out, and we'll all get to see what's going to be new with portals over the next 6 months, whether there's, if there's going to be some new features or essentially what their plans are for the next 6 months. So that's kind of what I've got on the news segment for this month. Yeah, if there's anything exciting in those release notes, we'll be sure to cover that next month. Now, just diving in right into today's topic, which is building a portal for customers to view and print invoices. So I want to get into some real life examples here and show you how how you could do something like that. Now, there's obviously with anything with portals, there's a number of different approaches that you can take when it comes to displaying invoices or displaying any sort of data from CDS. So the key thing here to remember when we talk about displaying invoices, the assumption I'm making is that it will be an invoice that's coming from CDS. So the data is coming from the invoice entity in CDS. So I'll just show you what I've kind of put together here. Now this will be a little bit like a cooking show where kind of got a lot of it built out already, and I'll show you kind of where those pieces all kind of fit together. So to get things started, what I did is I started off with a blank customer portal. Now, I know one of the people had been asking kind of what the difference is between Power Apps portals and Dynamics portals. And the quick answer to that is that there is no difference. They're the same technology, the same underlying code. The main difference is when you install one of the templates that's meant for Dynamics, you're just getting different data installed into your system. So, and possibly some extra solutions. So you can kind of think of the Power Apps portal, what's known as the starter template. That is kind of the base. It just has kind of the minimum stuff. And then when we start adding the customer service or the employee self-service or there's community portal and the partner portal, those are all building on top of that same starter portal foundation. So there no longer is a separate product called Dynamics 365 portals. There's just different portal templates, some of which depend on the Dynamics instance or the Dynamics apps, whereas the Power Apps portal starter template has no dependency on any of the Dynamics apps. You can install it in what people call the naked CDS instance, or a CDS instance without Dynamics. So in this case, because we're talking about displaying invoices, there is an invoice entity in the Dynamics 365 sales module. So in this case, I have installed the customer portal with the sales app so that we could leverage those existing invoices. So if I were to jump into my thing here, I'm going to just jump into the sales hub. I'll just show you what I've got set up in terms of data. So within my contacts, I've got my contact here, and I can see related, where we got here. So within sales, I should be able to look in. Nope, not there. Okay, let's look at invoices. That's probably the easiest place to see it. So you can see here, I've got an invoice that I've created for my demo. So again, the purpose of this demo is to say, okay, I've got this invoice in CDS. How do I display that to my customers through a portal? So again, what I've done is I've gone into into make.powerapps.com, and I went in and I created a portal. Now, when you see this portal from blank, that is your starter template. If you're interested in what people still kind of refer to as the Dynamics 365 portals, you click all templates, and in here you will see the additional, you'll see customer self-service, you'll see community, you'll see partner, and you'll see employee self-service. So all I've done here is I've installed the customer self-service portal, and that's what you're seeing. If I go back to here, this is essentially a vanilla customer self-service portal that I've got configured here. So the next thing I want to do is I want to say, okay, I want to actually expose my invoices on the portal. How do I go about doing that? So the key technology and really probably the best part of the Power Apps portals technology is entity forms and entity lists. If you're not familiar with those, what they let you do, and entity lists essentially lets you expose views that you've created in your Dynamics or your CDS, in your model-driven app. You can take a view that you've developed in CDS and expose it onto the portal. Entity forms are essentially the same thing, but they allow you to expose forms on your portal. So in this case, if we want to expose the invoices associated with a particular customer, what we're going to do is we're going to create an entity list that displays all the invoices related to the current person. And then to see the details of that invoice, we're going to expose an entity form that shows the details of that invoice. So the steps to do that are pretty straightforward. The first thing you would do is you need to create, let me just jump over to here. If I go back to my apps and I go into my solutions, you can see here I've created a solution here in the new maker portal. And what I've done is I've created a custom view for the invoice entity that I'm going to use to drive my entity list. And I've created a custom form that I'm going to, again, use to drive my entity form. So I've got my solution in here. All I've done is I've gone in and I've created a view. I've named the view web. And if I go into here, we'll be able to see I've added a couple columns to it. And again, the columns that you see in this view are going to be displayed on the portal. Going back here, as I mentioned, if I go into my invoices and I look at the forms, you can see here I've created a form called web, and I'm able to, okay, of course. Just set it in here. The form here that I've customized, again, that form is going to be displayed on my portal using the entity form technology. So I've got my form here, I've got my views. That's really all I've done in terms of customization to the model-driven app that I have. So now if I were to go back into if I go back to my apps, you'll see here I've got a few different apps installed as part of this environment. I've got the portal here, and I've also got a model-driven app called Dynamics 365 Portals. So keep in mind that all the data for your portal, all the web pages, all the things that we create are stored in CDS. So what Microsoft ships as part of when you install the portal, they ship you a model-driven app that will, the model-driven app that gives you access to all the entities that are used for your portal. So if I were to open that up, I'm able to see all the entities that go into building out my portal, including, as I mentioned, the entity forms and the entity lists. So we'll start off with our entity list. You can see in here, there's a couple that come out of the box, and that's for the help desk that comes out of the box with the customer service self-serve portal. In this case, the one that I've built for this particular demo is I've created a new one called Invoices. So if I open up an entity list, there's not much I had to do to configure what you're going to see. essentially I gave it a name. I told it which entity do I want to display. And then of course, in this case, I want to say I want to display invoices. I say which website do I want it for. That's again, which portal, because in theory, a single CDS instance can host multiple portals. So whenever you're doing this work, you're typically relating it to a particular portal. And then in here, I've gone in and said, I want to add a view because a single entity list can display multiple views. In the same way, when you're looking at views in here, so if I were to jump back to my entity list, same way that I can kind of drop this down and see multiple views, that same functionality exists in entity lists. So you're actually able to define multiple views if you wanted in here. In this case, I've just selected a single view. So I created my entity list. Again, I'm name. I say which entity do I want to see on my portal? Which views do I want to use? And then as I go down here, you'll see that I've checked the box that says enable entity permissions. Now, entity permissions are the way that data is secured on the portal. So whereas in regular Dynamics or CDS, you're using security roles, that concept does not apply whatsoever to a portal. So the data that's available on a portal is controlled by something called entity permissions. So in our case, we probably don't want to be showing every single invoice that's in the system to anyone who's logged in. We really want to show them their invoices. So in order to do that, and that's really the way that entity permissions have been designed. If you think of the standard security model in Dynamics, it's really based on the ownership of records. So your ability to see a record is based on your security roles, and those security roles secure things based on who owns them. So are you in the same business unit as the person who owns that record? Or do you have organization and you can see everyone's? In portals, entity forms are based on how are records related to the current person who's logged in. That's kind of the general premise. So an entity permission has a number of different scopes, but in general, it's based on, is that record related somehow to the person who's currently logged in? And so when we think about that from a portal's perspective, it makes sense because really what we typically want to do is say, show the invoices related to the current person. So in this case, what we have to do is I've created a new entity permission. And I'll just open this up here. I've created this entity permission. I've just given it a name of invoices, and I say which permission or which entity am I giving permissions on? And in this case, I want to say invoices. Again, we're attaching it to the website. And then you have the option to select the scope. So from this list, you can see that there's a few options, but all of them, other than global, really tie back to the contact who's logged in. Global permissions would be, you can see every record that's in the system. It doesn't matter how it's related to you. So there's either global, which means you can see everything, or one of these other scopes, which is based on how is it related to the person who's logged in. When we say contact scope, what we then do is we can define a relationship from contact that says you can see these records. So in this case, I select contact scope and I pick the relationship between contacts and invoices and say the person who's logged in can see any invoice that's related to this contact based on this particular relationship. Now, in this particular case, you can see that there's actually a couple different relationships that we could choose between. Sometimes there could be a lot of relationships. Sometimes there's maybe only one. But in this case, I'm selecting the customer. If the contact is selected as the customer on the invoice, they will be able to see those. And then what you do is you select what privileges does the person get when they have this particular permission. So can they read, create, append, write, delete, append to? In our case, because we're just concerned about viewing invoices, I've only assigned the read permission. So again, we've created our entity permission that says, here's our invoice. We're exposing invoices based on the fact that it's related to the contact who's logged in based on this relationship. We've said they can read these they can read the invoices. Now, we'll talk about the child entity permissions here in a second. But the last piece, and this is a piece that I see get missed quite a bit, is people create their entity permissions, but they forget to attach them to a web role. And so entity permissions are great, but if you don't assign them to a web role, which is what contacts actually get. So contacts aren't directly related to a permission, they're related to web roles. So contacts have web roles, and those web roles have permissions. So even if you create this permission without assigning it to a web role that will be attached to the person who's logged in, it's really of no use. So in this case, you can see I've attached it to the web role called authenticated users. Now I'll just touch on that very quickly. You'll see out of the box, we actually get, it'll come with 3 web roles. You might see extras if you install something like the partner portal, but there are 2 essentially special web roles. One is called anonymous users. So I mentioned earlier that contacts who are related to web roles, but there are 2 special web roles that the contact doesn't actually have to be related to. The first one is anonymous, which makes sense because if you're not logged in, there's no contact to associate you to. So the key thing to know about the anonymous user's web role is that anyone who's not logged in receives all the permissions associated with the anonymous web role. And then essentially the opposite is true for authenticated users. So someone who's logged in always gets the authenticated user's permissions, even if that contact isn't directly related to the authenticated user's web role. Any of the other web roles, you'd have to directly relate the contact to that web role, but those 2 special ones apply whether they're related or not. So in our case, what I've done is I've added my entity permissions because what I want to say in our sample is that all invoices, anyone who logs in should be able to see their own invoices. So that's how I've set up my web role. I see I've got a question here that I can touch on quickly. How are entity permissions associated with web page access control rules? And really they're both obviously related to security, but the web page access control rules are about the editing or restricting read access to web pages, whereas entity permissions are related to kind of other data that's not necessarily configuration. So again, invoices, or if you're using them for entity lists or entity forms, that sort of thing. So web roles, you can assign entity permissions, you can assign web page access control rules. There's a few different types of permissions that you can assign to a web role. Entity permissions are used to secure entity forms and entity lists, whereas web page access control rules are used to either grant change ability or to hide certain parts of your web pages based on the person who's logged in. So that's kind of the difference between those 2. So given that I've created my entity permissions, I've assigned that to a web role that says authenticated users, and I've created my entity list. There's only one last piece, and that is to actually create a web page that uses my entity list. So in that case, if I go into my web pages, what I've done is I've created a new page called Invoices. And you'll see that when I look at my Invoices page, one of the options you get when you're creating a page is which entity list would you like displayed. So if I hop over to my portal and I say, I want to create a new child page, in this kind of old front-side editing experience, you have the option to select from the ability to display entity forms or entity lists. So in my case, what I've done is I've created a page called Invoices, where I've selected the entity list that I've configured, and that will then show my list of invoices that exist in the system. So that's a pretty quick way of showing a list of all the invoices. Again, we've used an entity list here. We've taken that entity list, we've put it on the web page, and we have assigned the currently logged in user the appropriate web roles and the appropriate entity permissions to actually view the records that are related to them. So that's kind of the first part. Obviously, this doesn't provide a lot of details as to most people want to know more about the invoice, right? What Adria had asked for was, I want to be able to view and print invoices. So the next step is to say, how do we see the details of that? And so when we're looking at the details of a record, now we're talking about an entity form. So I'm going to just switch back over here. I'm going to look at the entity form that I've created. Again, I've created one called Invoice Details. So within the invoice details, it's a pretty straightforward setup. I provided the entity name, so invoice. I say which form do I want to display, and in this case, as I mentioned earlier, I'd created a form called web. And then I say there's a few other things. So I can say, is this a read-only form? Should people be able to edit, or is this an insert? So can people create invoices? In our case, we just want people to be able to view them. We don't want them to edit. So I've selected read-only as the mode. And then the next question here is, when someone goes to a page, how do I know which invoice to render? Which one do I show? And in this case, what we've said is we say, I accept a query string parameter of called ID, and so the GUID or the ID of the record will be passed in as a query string parameter to this, so that it knows which one to display. And then again, here I'm enabling entity permissions. If for some reason you don't want to worry about entity permissions, say you want an entity list where truly everyone can see every record, you can just not check the enable entity permissions. But as a general rule, I am typically clicking the enable entity permissions and setting those up properly so that there is security in the system. So in this case, I've essentially just said, I want to display an invoice. Here's the specific form. I want to be read-only, and the value is going to come as a query string parameter. And that's really all I needed to do to set up my basic view of an invoice. The last piece that we need to do here is to configure our entity list to allow us to view this particular entity form based on the rows in the list. So once I've got my entity form created, I'm going to hop over to my entity list. I'm going to go into my invoices, and I'm just going to hop over and find the place where I add the entity form to my list. So there's actually a couple ways of doing this. One option is to specify a web page for details view. So what I could do is I could create a web page, I could put my entity form on the web page, and then link it up here so that when you click the details from the entity list, it would actually open up a new page where that was. In this case, what I've decided to do is instead I want to just open it up in a modal pop-up. So the second option for doing the details is if you go over to the options tab, there's a grid configuration section where I can say, when someone says they want the details of it, I can say, what's my target? In this case, I say I want it to be an entity form. I've got my one entity form that's related to invoices, and that's all I have to do. So I've just linked my entity list with my entity form using the grid configuration, selected my invoice details, and that's all I have to do. Now, if I go over back to my portal here, if I click on this, had I not made that change, this would just all be read-only. There wouldn't be this drop-down. When I say view details, what it does is it opens up the details of that invoice on using the form that I've defined. So that, again, that's pretty straightforward. So in theory, if Edre had only asked to be able to view invoices, one could make the argument that I'd be done, right? Someone could log in, they can see their list of invoices, they can look, and they can view the details. Now, one thing to point out here is you'll see that we actually have here, we've got the list of products. So I want to go back and just show you, because if you're familiar with how kind of invoice works, there's an invoice details or kind of invoice line item entity that's associated with an invoice. So each one of those products that's been added is its own separate entity type. So because it's a different entity type, that means that there needs to be another entity permission. So if I go over to my entity permissions, you'll see that we have something called invoice products. So what I've done here is I've said, I'm creating an entity permission for invoice products. The schema name for that is invoice detail. But in this case, what I'm choosing, instead of saying related to the contact, because in this case, the products related to the invoices that I want to look at aren't directly related to the contact, they're kind of one relationship away. So what we do is we choose a scope of parent and say, any record related to a different record that I do have access to, I should be able to see. So in this case, when you select parent, you have to select a parent entity permission. So what I've done is I'm saying, you can see all invoice products where the people have the access to the invoices. So this invoices entity permission is the one I was showing just earlier. And again, you select the relationship here. So any invoice products that are related to invoices that I can see based on this permission, based on this relationship, I'm able to read. Without this permissions, you wouldn't have seen those invoice products on the form. They just wouldn't have existed because the permissions were not set up properly to display them. So keep in mind that every single entity that you're dealing with, and I'll show you one more example here in a second, every entity that you're dealing with needs to have entity permissions configured in some way if you want to see them on the portal. So that's essentially viewing an invoice. Again, the key here is using entity forms, using entity lists, using the forms and views that you may already have configured or customizing some new ones. It's all pretty straightforward. Once you've done this a few times, this probably took me 15, 20 minutes to set up, just setting up, a form and a view in the entity lists. It's all very straightforward. Now that's of course probably not the most challenging part of his ask. The challenging part is when we get into the printing of an invoice, because there's a lot of different ways of doing that. And what I want to do is just present a few different options here, just so you can see that there's always multiple ways of solving these problems. So when we talk about printing invoices, a lot of people might immediately jump to the idea of having a PDF that they could download and print. And so it's important to note that the portal itself doesn't have any capabilities to generate PDFs. That being said, it does have some capabilities that could let you display a PDF that if it already existed. So what I've done as an example here is I've actually configured the notes section for my invoice to display an invoice that's attached as a PDF to my actual invoice record. So if I jump back over to here and I look at my invoices, what I have done is if I look at the notes, I think that's on the details tab here. So you can see I have a note associated with my invoice that contains a PDF that is a printable version of the invoice. You can also see that I've put in *web*. That's basically a magic keyword that tells the portal that you're allowed to display that note on the portal. So without the *web* in the description here, the note wouldn't show up. So I put the *web* in here saying, yes, people in the portal can see this particular note. Now that's fine, but then the next question you're probably asking is, well, how does this PDF actually get into the notes section on my invoice? And there are a lot of different techniques. Again, this really has nothing to do with portals at this point. The first option you'd probably kind of go to would be using Power Automate, using a flow to generate this. Now, in my case, what I did is I did more of a manual effort. Not sure if you guys are familiar with, but there is some relatively new capabilities in Dynamics in the Sales Hub to actually generate PDFs based on Word templates. So the Word template functionality has been around for quite a while now, but now you can actually convert in one step. You can essentially define a Word template and have it exported as a PDF. So this Create PDF button is an out-of-the-box thing now that you can turn on. You click this, it downloads a PDF, and then you can save it back as a note on your record. That's what I did here. That's pretty manual. If you're dealing with hundreds of invoices, maybe not the approach that you want to take. You probably want to do something a little bit more automated. And so to do that, what I'd recommend is using Power Automate, using a flow to do this. And so you can even automate the use of those Word templates. And in fact, it's funny because this thing has really come full circle. This call came about because Megan Walker invited me to be in the MVP Advent calendar. And in fact, she's put out a blog post. You can see here it's on December 10th, essentially generating invoices to display in Power Apps portals. So if you want a step-by-step guide on how to, one possible solution to displaying invoices on a portal, you've got it right here on her blog post. She does great. She does great blog posts. She does great videos. She does quite a bit of work on portals. So there's a lot on there. And so she's actually gone through the steps, and you can see here that a lot of this has to do with the flow to actually create the PDF and do all that sort of stuff. And she refers to the work of another MVP, Bruce Sithole, who did the work to actually to create the PDF. So what she's doing is she's using OneDrive to do a document conversion. There's also another technique. It's possible to actually, let me just bring up the link here. Copy link here. The service that's being used by Dynamics here to create the PDF is something that is accessible. There's another MVP, Stefan here, who has shown here how you can actually generate the PDF based on a Word template. So generating the PDF is not as simple. It's not a one-liner, but it's certainly possible to do with CDS and with Flow and all these different things kind of working together. It is very possible to automatically have a PDF attached to your invoices that can then be consumed by the portal. Now, just a quick note here, if I go back to my entity permissions, a note is a related entity to invoices. So again, you need to make sure that if you use this technique that you have the appropriate entity permissions for notes. So if I go back in here, you can see here I've created another entity permission that says, here are the notes. And if the notes are related to an invoice that I have access to, then you can see those notes. So that's one thing that you have to do in order to get the notes to show up on the web form, or sorry, on the entity form. I'll show you one of the things that I had to do. So in addition to putting the timeline control on my form, there's one other bit that you have to do that's a little bit special on your entity form, and that's using entity form metadata. So if you go over into your entity form metadata, if you're not familiar, entity form metadata is a way of kind of taking your forms that even further than just CDS lets you do. So you can do additional things. So in this case, if you want the notes to show up properly in your portal, you have to go in there and you have to tell it, you need to create an entity form metadata record and say, I want the notes and then you can say, can people create notes? Can they edit them? Can they delete them? There's a bunch of options here. So using the entity form metadata can allow you to define that yes, notes can be displayed on your portal in combination with the entity metadata. With the entity permissions and the metadata, all those combined together allows you to go into here, and you'll see this area down here, which is displaying the notes. If I were to click that, I could see a PDF that I could download. Now, if you read Megan Walker's blog post, you'll see that she actually takes a different technique than using notes. What she does is she takes the notes, or she takes the PDF and actually uploads them as web files into portals. So web files would be kind of the typical way of uploading images or documents to your portal for people to download. So what she does is she uses flows to create a web file that has the PDF, and then she also, what's really cool about her solution, if I show a screenshot, is that she embeds the PDF so that it can be viewed right on the page. Let's see if I can get I think she has a screenshot of that here somewhere. No, she did, because I saw it. Oh yeah, there we go. So on her invoice details, she's actually embedding the PDF right on the page. And that's pretty cool. She uses a JavaScript library to do that. And of course, once it's embedded on the page, then you can view it, you can print it. So that's really cool. But just know that she uses a different technique where she's actually creating web files, and that's how the users get access to the PDF, as opposed to notes related to the invoice. So like I said, lots of different ways of doing it, just if you're trying to do PDFs. That being said, there's another technique, because there's a little bit of overhead there with PDFs. Sometimes PDFs don't, PDFs can be a little finicky. There's another option if you want to be able to print invoices, and I want to give you a sample of what that is. Now, What we're going to get into is a little bit more of a developer topic. So what we're going to be using is we're going to be using a little bit of JavaScript, a little bit of Liquid to create a printable, a print-friendly template for our invoice. So if I go back over to here, what I'm going to open is the Xrm Toolbox. Now, if you're doing any sort of portals development and you're not using the portal code editor for Xrm Toolbox, you're probably making your life too hard. So I strongly recommend looking into the tools, the portals related tools in the Xrm Toolbox. We use them all the time. This one in particular is called the Portal Code Editor. So when you're doing, whether it's CSS or JavaScript or Liquid, we find this interface to be a lot easier to use because you can have multiple tabs open and you can kind of see everything all in one place. So strongly recommend you do something like that. So what I'm doing here quickly, because we're running out of time here, but what I'm doing is on my entity form, if I go into my invoice details, so this is in my entity form called invoice details, which is the entity form being displayed in the pop-up. What I'm doing is I'm just doing something really simple here. I'm saying I'm creating a link that says print this invoice, and this link will point to another page that I've created called invoice details, and I'm passing the ID of the current invoice on the query string. And then I'm saying target blank to have it open in a new window. So I'm just going to enable this. I'm going to update my entity form here. I'm going to go back here. I'm going to clear my config so that my changes are reflected on my entity form. I'm going to open this up there. And if the demo gods are in my favor today, I'll see a print button here at the top of the page. There we go. So again, all I've done here, nothing too fancy, I've just added a link to the top of my page that goes to another page called invoice details and takes the ID of the invoice and passes it on the query string. So I'm going to click print here. What that's going to do is it's opening up another page that you can see is a lot more stripped down, doesn't have the header, doesn't have the footer, and displays some details about the invoice. Now I'll show you how I've done that. What I've done there is, if we look in the URL, we have a page called invoice details. So if I look into my web pages, we'll see that I have a page called invoice details. Now, invoice details is using a page template that I've created called invoice details. Invoice details is a web template that uses, or is a page template that uses the invoice details web template, which I will open up again in Xrm Toolbox. If I go into web templates and look at invoice details, you can see here is the code that I've written to create that page. Now I'll just flip back here. What's important for this particular web page is that I've unchecked the use website header and footer. So that gets rid of the web page header and footer that probably is not something you want to be displaying in your print template. So I've unchecked that, so it's no longer using the website header and footer, and that means that my web template here that I've got is fully responsible for rendering the entire markup on the page. Now using Liquid, which Liquid is great to be able to query data out of the CRM, and since we're only worried about viewing the invoice and not editing, Liquid is very, very useful here. I go into the entities invoice, and what I do is I pull the invoice based on the ID that I put into the query string. Now that I've got that invoice, I can then display all the details that I want. You can see here I'm displaying the name. I then get the invoice details, so the invoice products associated with it. I do a loop in Liquid. I loop over all the elements and I display the name and the amount. I can display the total. And then I'm just using a tiny little bit of JavaScript here to automatically pop up the print window when you hit that page. So obviously when I look at this example, this isn't the most nicely formatted invoice, but you could take this a lot further. You could put in more details. Really, almost any of the data that's in Dynamics, you can pull out of it with Liquid and display in a very kind of print-friendly template here, using the print CSSs that will target well for printers, so that when you print it, it comes out nice. So rather than worrying about generating a PDF, if you just generate a page that prints nicely, that's another approach for creating a printable view of your invoice. The other thing to keep in mind is that when we look at Liquid, all of this is enforcing entity permissions. So if I didn't have access to this, I couldn't just guess at these IDs. All of this is being enforced with entity permissions. So this is a kind of a secure way of doing it. If someone happened to know the ID of someone else's invoice, they couldn't see their invoice because they wouldn't have the appropriate entity permissions. So that's another technique. One more technique I just wanted to mention quickly is we talked about using notes. Another option would be to use the built-in SharePoint integration with Dynamics portals or with Power Apps portals. If you have a way of having your invoices, again, you could use Power Automate, you could use a flow to create the invoice, store it, instead of storing it as a note, store it in a SharePoint document location associated to the invoice. You could then display the SharePoint document location on your portal and allow the people to download the PDF from there as well. So that is a whirlwind tour of one or two or three different ways of displaying invoices in your portal and allowing someone to view and print those invoices. So the keys here are use your entity lists, use your entity forms. They're out of the box functionality that really can really speed up development and get things built out. And if you're looking to do things with PDFs or you're printing, you might have to get a little bit fancier, but keep in mind that all the data is coming from CDS. So use Power Automate to kind of take your portal to the next level. So that's kind of what I want to cover on the invoicing, being able to view and print invoices on a portal. So I'm going to flip back to my PowerPoint here. All right, go back through here, portal news. So now I just wanted to take the time and if there's any questions that people have, I see, I'm just looking in the questions here. If you do have any questions, please feel free to drop them in there and I will do my best to kind of answer some questions. See, there's some audio issues, which thank you, Jason, for dealing with those. I got a question here from I believe, Alar. General question about portals. Could you do web shop on top of the portals that take product info from Business Central? So as a consultant, the answer is always yes, but it's how much time and money do you want to spend on that? The main data source for anything portals related is CDS. So your best bet is to probably synchronize those products with CDS, and then your portal can pull them from CDS. So you could use Power Automate to do that. You could use there's a whole host of different tools out there to synchronize that data. Now there's another option called a companion app, where you create a web service that you host yourself, that you put somewhere else, that would allow you to interact with external web services like I know Business Central might have. So again, it is possible. Previous to the Microsoft acquisition of the portals, there were kind of basic e-commerce capabilities in portals, but those don't exist in this new version. So certainly the idea of a web shop is a popular one with portals. There are some solutions out there to help you with that, to help you with payment processing on a portal. None of that is out of the box, but if you consider portals to be a development platform, there's really nothing you can't do, but that wouldn't be a straightforward a few clicks and away you'd go. There would be a significant amount of setup that would have to be done for that. While I'm doing these Q&As, I'm going to just share the poll if I can, just in case there's people who have joined us late and want input on what we might talk about next time. So I've got the poll up there while I continue to kind of work through these questions. So I see a question here that says, is there a way to apply record level security permissions? And the answer to that is really, I mean, outside of entity permissions, there's not really much, that's kind of what you have access to. So there's not really a way of saying, hey, this particular person gets access to this, other than building yourself a custom entity and linking users to those records via that custom entity and using entity permissions to build to kind of match that relationship. So if you created a custom share entity and you essentially said any record, you have the ability to see any record related to any things that you're shared with, you could, but there's really nothing out of the box in the way that there is with access teams and Dynamics. So it is possible, but not out of the box in the way that some might hope. I see it. Oh, I love this question. Can you display data from virtual entities in Power Apps portals? So the answer is yes. I will, a shameless plug for my blog. Actually, one of my first blog series was actually on just kind of playing around with how do virtual entities work in portals. And so the answer is that they work pretty well. The biggest concern I have with the way that virtual entities work is the way that caching works in the portal. So if the data in the virtual entities is being updated frequently, like so if it's every minute something's happening, what's going to happen is that the portal is going to cache that, and you may not see updates very quickly on your portal. But if you're talking about a virtual entity that doesn't change very often, or maybe never changes, is just to display, then yeah, the portals is totally capable of doing that. And yeah, look on my blog, engineeredcode.com/blog, for the, I think it was a 3 or 4 part series that I did on how virtual entities works with portals. Again, back in the day, that was Dynamics 365 portals, but everything still applies to Power Apps portals. Someone's asking, where can I get a recording of the webinar? So that it'll be posted on the social channels. That would be maybe a good time to talk about, I know some of you may have registered through the engineeredcode.com. There was a link where you could register, and then you would have gotten a link to actually sign up for the webcast. I would say the best way to kind of keep up to date on what we're doing with the with the portals community call is to go onto the Engineered Code website and register for that, because that gets you onto my mailing list, where I'll be sending out, essentially once a month, I'll be sending out, here's a link to the previous one, here's what we're talking about next time, here's the link to register, that sort of stuff. So otherwise, feel free to follow us on Twitter, because I'll certainly, once the recording is put up somewhere, we'll certainly be sharing that link. But yeah, if you like what you've seen today and are interested in participating in future calls, I recommend that you, if you haven't already, sign up on our website and get on the mailing list, and I'll be sending out an email at least once a month saying, this is what's coming up, here's the link to register, all that sort of stuff. So that's where you can find the recording. We've got Felix asking, what is the best approach to call external web API on the portal? And so you've got 2 options on that. One would be the companion app technique that I was mentioning earlier. It depends on whether you control that external web API. So if that external web API is something that you've built, then essentially you could think of it as a companion app. If it's not something that you've built, there's a good chance that you'll find it difficult to securely call it from your portal, because, well, it's pretty straightforward to make JavaScript AJAX request calls to external APIs on your portal. What's a little bit more challenging is to make sure that they're secured, because most of those calls, you want to probably know what the contact is who's logged in. You want to know who's logged in order to make those calls in their context. And that's a little bit, and that's tricky to do if you don't control the other end. One of the things that was released late last year was the OAuth to implicit grant flow, which, long story short, what that means is that the portal can now issue a token directly to you that you can then pass to external web services that includes a claim that has the ID of the contact. So there is a secure way of doing that. But if you don't control that external API, there's a good chance that it's not just going to work seamlessly. So you may have to put the companion app in the put the companion app in the middle to handle the authentication, and then call in the APIs from there. So our typical go-to method for calling those external APIs is to create the companion app and then go from there. I do have a blog post about companion apps on my website, as well as Colin Vermander, another MVP. He's kind of the go-to guy for companion apps. He's written, he's got something on GitHub, kind of a starter companion app. So he's a great resource for that as well. I've got a question here that says, can we include or can we embed Canvas apps in the portal? So there's no specific functionality. There's no direct out-of-the-box integration between Canvas apps and portals. Now, because Portal is just a website, could you do something with iframes? I think you probably could, depending on how the security works for your Canvas app. But there's no, at this time, there's no current kind of out-of-the-box integration with Canvas apps. You'd be relying on some sort of technique using iframes to get any sort of Canvas app on your portal. I think that's all the questions that I see on the list. I'm seeing, can you have two versions of Knowledgebase articles hosted on the same portal, e.g. authenticated users see a list of knowledge articles different from what anonymous users see? So you could, it wouldn't be out of the box necessarily, because if I close this and we go back to our entity permissions, you'll see that entity permissions on knowledge-based articles are global. So I look at knowledge-based articles, you can see that global, so that means everyone can see everything. Now, it is possible to implement your own knowledge-based article system using knowledge articles in Liquid. So I would say that with some development effort, yes, it's possible, but no kind of out-of-the-box way of doing that other than, but there is the, with knowledge articles, there are access levels. So yeah, definitely look into knowledge article access levels, because that will, I think, do what you're doing, where you can have different levels of premium users versus non-premium users, and they see different knowledge articles. So yeah, sorry, you can do it with, I always forget about the knowledge articles and them having if I go into my knowledge articles, I don't have anything that's public, but there is a way of categorizing those. I do have if you look at the YouTube video that I've done on knowledge articles, I talk about the permissions there. Yeah, thanks, Cheryl. You caught me. I'd forgotten about those momentarily, so thank you for pointing those out. It says, can we use Power Automate with Portal to call custom action? I'm assuming you mean actions within workflows. So you can, within the processes, how you can create actions. So the workflow or the portals will let you fire off kind of traditional CRM workflows. So if you were to create a workflow and add your action to it, you could have, can we use Power Automate with Portal to call custom action? I'm not sure what you mean by that. Like I said, right now the portal doesn't have anything specific with Power Automate. Its workflow stuff is still based on the legacy kind of CDS workflows. So no specific integrations between Power Automate and portals, other than the fact that obviously they both work on CDS. So they do work well together, but there's no way to, right now, to initiate a flow on a Power Apps portal. I see here we've got, I think we can have multiple portals apps on a single environment, but is there a way to deploy those portals separately? Okay, I'll take this as the last question. So I'm not sure what you mean by deploy the portals separately. So each portal will get their own Azure web app. That's what Microsoft does when you deploy a portal. It's a Azure web app that's being hosted. So when you have multiple portals, they each get their own web app, so they'll be kind of isolated in that way. So I hope that answers your question. And yes, you can certainly have multiple portals within one CDS instance. And like I said, each one of those portals will get its own separate web app. They wouldn't be sharing the same server resources from that perspective. So, all right, we are now officially 1 minute over time. So the last thing here is just to talk about what's coming up here. So Q&A. So I did want to announce that the next call will be February 13th, 3 weeks away. I think typically you'll see it kind of near the end of the month, but I'll be on vacation and somewhere much warmer than where I am right now the week of the following week. So I'm pushing up the call a week earlier this week. So if you want to put that in your calendars, again, for anyone who's signed up for my on the portals on the mailing list, that if you've registered via engineeredcode.com, I'll be sending out an email. The email that includes the link to the recording will also include a link on how to register here. Otherwise, you can always go on an MS Dynamics World. They'll have the registration there as well. So I think that's it for today. I hope people got some value out of this. I see that I think we ended up with 25 or so people. So and I'm going to keep doing this until no one shows up. So if you liked it, spread the word. If you have any feedback, please get in touch with me. Again, this is for the community. So whatever the community is looking for, that's what I'm hoping to do with these calls. So hope to see you all next month. And otherwise, have a great day, and we'll talk to you next month.